All right, let's jump right in. We've all heard it, right? More is better. But is it? What if the real secret to living well isn't about piling more on, but actually knowing when to say enough? That's what we're digging into today, the surprising hidden dangers of having way too much.
I mean, really think about it for a second. We're just hardwired to want more, aren't we? More success, more information, more everything. But does that constant chase for more really lead to a better place? It's this huge unspoken rule of modern life, and honestly, it's time we took a closer look.
And you know what? This is not some new, groundbreaking idea. People have been saying this for centuries. It's that old piece of wisdom. Too much of everything is not good. Sounds super simple, right? Almost too obvious. But in our crazy 24/7 world, it feels like we've completely forgotten it.
So, okay, how do we actually use this old idea in our lives today? Well, we can frame it as a mental model, a kind of rule of thumb, and we're going to call it the tipping point principle. And it's all about figuring out that exact moment, that point where something good starts to go south.
So what does this principle actually look like in action? The best way to picture it is like a hill or an arch. As you add more of a good thing, you're climbing up the hill. The benefits are growing, things are getting better. You eventually hit the very peak, the top of that hill. That's the sweet spot. But here's the catch. If you keep going, you don't stay at the top. You start going down the other side. And suddenly, those benefits start to shrink. That shape? It's called an inverted U-curve, and it's the perfect picture of how more can suddenly turn into less.
Yeah, we can actually break this curve into 3 simple stages. First up, you've got beneficial gains. This is the good part. Everything you add makes things better. Then, boom, you hit the optimal point. That's the peak, the perfect amount. But then comes the danger zone, detrimental decline. This is where you've overdone it and you're actually worse off than you were before. The whole game, really, is figuring out which phase you're in before you start sliding down that other side.
Okay, so that's the theory, right? Sounds interesting, but is it just an idea? Absolutely not. This principle is working behind the scenes all the time, in places you might not even expect. Let's look at some real-world examples to see what I mean.
Let's kick things off with something we all do every single day: sleep. Obviously, if you get too little sleep, you're basically a walking zombie. We all know that feeling. But have you ever had one of those weekends where you sleep for like 10 or 11 hours and you wake up feeling even more tired? That's it. That's the other side of the curve. Too much sleep can make you just as foggy and useless. The goal isn't to get the most sleep, it's to get the optimal amount.
And it's not just physical stuff. This happens inside our heads too. I mean, being underinformed is a bad idea. You're going to make bad choices. But let's be real. In today's world, the bigger problem is information overload. You've got 1,000 articles, 1,000,000 YouTube videos, endless opinions. And what happens? You get totally stuck. It's analysis paralysis. You can't make a decision because there's just too much noise. You've blown right past the tipping point.
And what about something like confidence? It works the exact same way. If you have too little confidence, you're frozen. You never take any risks. But if you have too much confidence, well, that's arrogance. You stop listening to people, you ignore warning signs, and you make some really dumb, reckless mistakes. That sweet spot is right in the middle. That calm, capable confidence that actually gets things done.
And exercise is a classic one. We all know being a couch potato is bad for you, right? But then you've got the whole no pain, no gain mantra. People think you have to destroy yourself in the gym every day. But what really happens when you push too hard for too long? You don't get stronger, you get injured, you burn out. Overtraining actually makes you weaker. You shot past that optimal point and are now going backwards.
You see the pattern here, right? It's so clear. Whether we're talking about our bodies, our minds, our work, the goal should never be the extreme. The magic, the real progress, that sweet spot, it's always somewhere in the middle. It's all about balance.
All right, so I think we get the idea. But, knowing this principle exists is one thing. How in the world do you actually find that sweet spot in your own life? Let's switch from theory to practice and figure that out.
Okay, so finding that sweet spot really begins with a mental shift. First things first, you just have to accept that a tipping point exists for pretty much everything. Step 2, start paying close attention to the signs. You're looking for the point of diminishing returns. When does that extra hour of work stop being productive and just start making you tired? That's your signal. Next, you have to actively change your goal. Stop aiming for maximum and start aiming for optimal. It's not about doing the most, it's about doing what works best. And finally, remember this isn't a set it and forget it kind of thing. You've got to keep checking in,
Ask yourself, is this still helping me? Or have I gone too far?
So, I'm going to leave you with this one question to think about. In your own life, your job, your fitness, maybe even your relationships, where have you pushed past the tipping point? Where is that constant push for more actually starting to give you less? Seriously, take a moment to think about it, because figuring that out, that could change absolutely everything.